An organizer and may now speak to
webinar that we do on occasion. And first time we've done this one. So this is basically called turning the ship around or getting your entire company to participate in a CRM or ACT strategy. And this was kind of, there's a lot of folks doing tips and tricks and, things like that. But this is really designed for organizations. And what we've learned in about 20 years of doing this is that the owner of the company or somebody might have a great idea to go and implement something, and then they go back and it's like herding cats to get it going. And maybe you've been using a CRM or using ACT for a while, and different people are using different things, and some are using it and some are not, and you just wonder how to like I said, turn the ship around and get folks consistent in this again. So with that said, let me just kind of get started. And this is largely just me talking. It's not a technical session, but we'll do some technical ones here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll just point to that. So, here, why are you here? What can this be for you? Is if you're using a CRM and maybe you've got a team or a company or some sort of organization, and you see people going in different directions. So one guy's using Outlook, one guy's using his notebook. People are using ACT for just basic information like a Rolodex. Maybe somebody's customized the whole thing to the hilt and they're trying to use that. And just the problem with that is that it's really hard to see as an organization where you go. It's like different people rowing a ship, paddling different ways, and it's just very ineffective and inefficient way to do stuff. Also, as you begin an evolution in CRM use, most people start using CRM as a Rolodex, and which is good. And what I mean by that, it's just a place to keep your numbers: my name, address, phone number, city, state, zip, and that's about it. The common complaint of CRM is that it takes too long, and so I like to address that. I like to say if you can't get a conversation into the CRM in a minute or two, you're probably spending too much. A few exceptions. So we certainly have some industries that have lots of fields and lots of things to put into it. But generally for sales, if you're going to make cold calls or go out and visit people, we want that data to get in quickly and the right data filled out, and so that it can be a useful thing to the team. So important thing. So inconsistent CRM use is doom for a CRM strategy. And what I mean by that is different people doing different things different ways. Some use it, some don't. If you can't trust it, if you can't trust that the information is accurate, if you can't trust that the last call got or made its way into the database, then what are you going to do? You're going to do voicemails, you're going to do emails, you're going to yell across the room, you're going to use sticky notes. You're going to do it rather than let somebody else do it. You're going to take control of things. And so, like I said, it's absolute doom. You've got to be able to trust the system, and you've got to be able to know what's in it and use it that way. And then when you do it that way, everybody can just kind of relax and go back to work. And it's a very freeing type of a feeling. So for me, and my CRM, and for most folks, my CRM is my most valuable asset as a company. It's not my best salesperson. It's not where my location is. It's not my products. My database that I have is the most valuable thing that we have. And one of the stats I pulled off the net was, good, effective CRM implementation can provide a revenue increase of about 41% or so per salesperson. And we have seen that in managing ACT databases for over 100 companies, that the folks that we can get to be consistent, get it into ACT, rely on that for their forecasts, rely on that for their follow-ups, those guys get effective use and huge return on their investment. We had a guy, two examples. One guy told us that they've doubled their sales by using this. I had another guy that was in mortgage. He had a little field in his database called target refinance rate. And he put that in there every time he talked to somebody, just kind of what rate it made sense for them to refinance. And rates dipped for a day or so, and he sent a blast out, and he made $50,000 in gross profit in a single afternoon by one email blast. So having that there and consistent, I've got another company where one of the salespeople had a stroke, and he got better eventually, but he was out for 6 months. And so for 6 months, his boss is trying to keep his territory together, but all the details weren't there. Those details were in the guy's brain, and he wasn't there to help. And so his sales, it was a great tax on his sales manager and the company to try and keep him going, but also a lot of details that he had in the pipelines and leads and sales that he had going on kind of fell away until he got back. And so that was costly by not having that in a consistent place. So here's something that I've really tried to preach, because we see a lot of folks, they go, hey, what's your favorite CRM? Is it Act? Is it Dynamics? Is it Salesforce? Is it, the notebook I carry? Is it Outlook? Is it Zoho or all these other places? I'll tell you something. More than anything else, CRM strategy or CRM use is a strategy first and a technology second. For the most part, people switch to different CRMs and they end up with the exact same problems because they didn't fix the problem. And the problem a lot of times is inconsistent use, a team that's not on board with it, and just no accountability. We had a company one time we went in and they had about 40 people. And their boss, the owner of the company, stood up right away and said, hey guys, we've invested in this great CRM. We've spent a lot of money on it, and use it if you feel like it. And what do you think they did? They didn't use it. The system became an expensive paperweight or an expensive Rolodex, and they stopped within a year. And so, if you're going to invest in this, it's a very expensive tool if it's just a Rolodex. If you're consistent in it, if you're the whole team's on board, it can be a huge value to your organization. So that's kind of what we have with that. And it is, or it can be, an evolution. Make sure I just unmuted somebody. Sorry about that. If you're muted, I don't hear your hold music and don't hear if you're talking to somebody. So I'm going to keep you muted, and we'll open up for questions in a bit. But it's an evolution working together as a team. And so, man, I take it slow. We don't need to do it all at once. But if we can be consistent on a few things and get to where we can trust the system. And so typically people that come to a session like this, maybe they've become frustrated because folks aren't using the system. They're not using it consistently. They run reports and they don't show anything up. And so we want to move you from left to right with this. Just as an overview, what is CRM opposed to other things? And it's a technology for managing all your company's relationships, interactions with customers and potential. So anything with a customer goes there, not just my name, address, and phone number, and not just my pipeline. I mean, we want to basically try to track everything we can. And we don't overdo it. I mean, a lot of times it's 4 to 10 data points per customer. It can be more, it can be less, but what we're looking for is something that's consistent and adds value. And what I found in my business, when I put things in the database, I can go back 5, 10, 15. I've had people call me that had talked to me 10 years ago. And I was able to look up that conversation and refresh my memory about how they worked, maybe what type of a buyer they are, and things like that. And it was very helpful. And pretty much without exception, that was helpful. So somebody that we have a saying in Texas, big hat, no cattle. So we get folks that they just want to talk about CRM, or they just want to talk about, but they don't have a budget. They're not the right decision maker. Maybe they're just looking for free training. Maybe they're trying to shop you from somebody else. I don't know. But if you can uncover that and record it into the CRM, we have a company, and they basically record communication styles. And so if somebody wants to get to the point, if somebody likes to tell stories, if somebody needs lots of facts, they have a place in ACT for that. And so anybody on the team that speaks to them understands that their communication style is a certain one, and they do that. So anyway, that's what we do with this, and it's a place to manage all of our customer information, and you can let that grow as big as you want. So when we talk about effective CRM, and um, again, it's not ACT specific, although I use ACT, most of you guys use ACT. It's any tool that you use. And so before you go out, I like to say, before you go out and start to look for a new one, see if you can't get folks to use the one you have. And folks like, ACT consultants, typically like ourselves, we can help remove the technical barriers to using the system. But what we need you to do is help with the human barriers. And so part of that is effective CRM flows from strong internal procedures. So you need to have procedures and processes in place for what happens when somebody calls on the phone, what constitutes a lead, what constitutes getting a quote, what information do we need to close a deal, to close a quote. When you make a phone call, when do we count it? Is it dialing the numbers? Is it having a conversation? So what we're looking for then is to develop some strong internal procedures for how we do things. And what we've been working on this year, kind of my year thing, is to get everybody on my team basically a one-page procedure list per employee. So if you're in accounting and you order software and you collect money and you change things, change users for us, we've got a one-page sheet that we're working on that they have that so that they can be consistent. And so, having it written down leads to consistent use, leads to fewer inconsistencies or mistakes. And so to do that, first look at what the need is, look at what's required, who's responsible, and then consider putting all of these in a one-pager for each person. And that flows before you even look at CRM. CRM is going to help you go further and maybe manage more customers. We had this other thing one time where we were doing just fine. We had 2 or 3 leads a month, and we'd take care of them and close them. And we went to a trade show one time where one of the speakers was a big ACT user, and he told us, 4,000 people out there that we were the guys to use, which was great. We had people standing 10 deep to talk to us at our booth. It was kind of a salesperson's dream. But what we learned in that, in coming back and trying to fulfill the orders, is that we didn't have a consistent process to handle that increased capacity need. And so it was a struggle. And so after that, what we did is we tried to go back and work on our procedures, and we learned that by documenting and getting our procedures in place, we had more capacity with the same amount of people. And also we gave a better experience to our customers because we were consistent. And we handled somebody the same way if we had 2 deals this month or 20 deals this month. So it was a big epiphany for us. All right, move next. And so you also want to kind of identify what your KPIs are, your key performance indicators. And these are just things that you're going to try to track. And don't overdo it. Keep it simple. Like the quote says here, when you establish KPIs, you'll find it's resource intensive. It can be, you find a cramp in your style, but it is well worth it in terms of the value it becomes to your company, the consistent use, and the consistent experience that your customers will have. So to do this, we want to define it, measure it, record it, and then we'll report against it. And so that's once we've defined it, we can put it into the CRM, and we can have our users record that so that management can report against it later on. A lot of times when we're doing a CRM project, the first thing they'll ask about is, show me the report. And your reports are going to be empty unless you fill it out consistently. And you can't fill it out consistently if you don't have the right places for the data to land. So we have to look at database design and put that around your procedures first, and then users can be trained to enter the data the right way, and then we can do reports. And so for a lot of times, we do reports last in the project. So in terms of getting it into CRM, I would consider the following. What information do you gather from every customer or prospect? And I would be consistent. You only have one chance when somebody calls you to stick your head in that company, poke it around, and look around at what's going on. And take that time to ask them questions. Ask them questions that let you know how how valuable a client this can be. If they've, you know, if they're, like I said, big hat, no cattle, or if they're not a good fit, now's the time to know. And also maybe take a look and are there other things that you can do for them later? So maybe the current project is small, but you uncover something else later. And you know, we've done that. It's, you know, a lot of people that do what we do, they use ACT to stick their head in the company, and then they look around at their network needs and programming needs and other things like that, and they're able to help quite a bit. So when you're putting stuff in, keep it simple if you can. Um, I like to try to suggest that the salesperson should be able to fill out information on a call in about a minute or two. And it's okay to crawl and walk and run. I would rather see the whole company be consistent and doing just a little bit than to overcomplicate the design of the database and have everybody stumble out of the blocks. So crawl, walk, run, and be consistent, get it in. So with that, we have, you know, and this is more ACT specific, but this is where we record key communications. First, we put information into our fields, but then we have notes, we have histories, and some folks use these things interchangeably. And so I want to, you know, give you a little ACT tip here, and that is that notes are a good place for internal communication, general information, or inter-team communication. It's not a place where you're going to go record the phone call that happened or that you have a deal that's coming. Histories are for recording those business communications, phone calls, critical events. Activities are things that are scheduled that have not yet happened. So there's a little bit of a distinction in ACT, especially if you've used Outlook and stuff. An item on your calendar technically means that it's scheduled, but it's not yet been done. So a past due activity on your calendar means that you missed something. It's an anomaly rather than a norm. And so we like to see you clear out past due activities so that they create that history so that we can record that they've been done. And then opportunities are where we track our deals. And if you do a lot of quoting, we work with QuoteWorks, which is a plugin for ACT to do quoting. But those are the different places. And so you're going to have, you know, relationships with people where we're going to put in fields, and maybe we'll record the industry that they're in and the temperature or hot, warm, cold of that prospect, or perhaps we'll mark where in the stage of the sales process we are. And then we have deals that we track, and we have information about deals, the size of the deal, the products on the deal, the pricing of the deal, the close date of the deal. So we've got different entities in your ACT CRM to cover some of these. Things that you should talk about as a team. Do we record all the calls or some of the calls? And if you want to be consistent, record them all, because it's helpful. I mean, it's helpful to know that I have to call this guy, you know, 50 times for a $75 deal. It can be helpful when we're trying to run reports to gauge the effectiveness of our salespeople. You also might want to define what constitutes an opportunity. If we go to a trade show and we talk about doing business together, do I need to come home and record everybody that I met at the trade show as a sales opportunity? I typically don't. I've learned that most of the guys at trade shows, they're leads and they're good people to talk to, but there's not necessarily a deal there. And so we follow up and we manage the relationship with the contact first, and then we move to an opportunity when we're going to track that. How long do we take to follow up, or will we follow up a lead? And so when somebody calls us, here's a rule that I have. I've got 5 touches over 30 days. So if you call and ask for anything, I'm going to try to call you 5 times or touch you 5 times over 30 days, with the idea being that I'm going to see if I can get you to engage, which means we're participating in the conversation about your needs and our solution, and are we a good fit? If after 5 days and 30 days, I learned this when I was a single guy, if you ask somebody out 5 times and they don't want to go, or even maybe 2 or 3 times, you're more of a stalker than persistent. And so just define for yourself at what point are you going to continue. And so 5 touches over 30 days seems to be a good number. You can change that. Um, and then don't forget your existing clients. How frequently do you want to follow up with those existing folks? And we have found that a lot of times we get the deal and then we forget to take care of that person. I had my 12-year anniversary this week. And, so the inclination now that we've got kids and stuff like that is just like, hey, let's see if we can get out. We'll go to the Golden Corral and go to the grocery store afterwards. And what I had to remember is that this is my special person. My wife is my special person, and so I made sure and washed the car and took a bath and got dressed up and went to a nice place. And same thing true with your customers. You want to make sure, even if they're regular ongoing customers, you want to show them that they're special to you. And you should have a strategy for that. Otherwise, they will vote by going away, which is not what you want. So next principle with this is you want to be consistent. Many of the ACT consultants out there will all say this: if it's not ACT, it didn't happen. And don't enable bad behavior. So if something should be an ACT and it's not there, have that person put it there. Have that person, if you're a sales manager and you're running reports on Monday and one of the guys isn't there, he didn't do it, and gauge them accordingly. So that's my suggestion is just to try to make sure it's all in ACT, be consistent, and then we want to review. So in ACT we can set up groups, and what I do is I have groups for the date that the lead was entered or the date that the contact was entered, and I review those fields and make sure that they're consistently entered. I've got basic fields that I've color coded, or you make them required, and I want to make sure that we're totally filled out on all of those things so we can review that. And then finally, just training, and this is important. It doesn't have to be formal training, but it can be just talking about it. And the times that we've talked about it, Monday morning meeting or daily calls, and just how's it going? Are you able to get it in okay? The worst thing you could do is to launch some new strategy and then disappear for 6 months and not talk about it. People are going to go back to what they're used to. They're going to go back to bad behaviors. And, I have a workout group in the gym, and there's about 8 or 10 guys, and we all share a coach together. And we get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I go there rain or shine because they're my friends. We hold each other accountable. We're in this together. And so I've been consistent for a couple of years now, where I never was able to do that before because I've got a team and we're regularly together. And same thing will work with this. So there you go. That's that piece. Once that's all done, then we can run reports. So reports are a good place for a product of asking good questions first, a properly defined database structure, and consistent use over time. If you do that, you'll get wonderful information that allow you to pivot your company, that will allow you to judge the performance of a salesperson 6 weeks or 6 months before you would otherwise. A lot of times people will evaluate by QuickBooks. They look at the sales that have come in for the last quarter, and they might keep somebody or reward somebody or let them go based on what happened. And that's not that that's not important, but a lot of times it's a lagging indicator, meaning it's 3 to 6 months before the data hits there. What if you could figure out that the guy's not able to perform 6 months early by looking at the calls that he made? A new employee should be able to make phone calls. A new employee should be able to have conversations about products and things that are offered. And so if you're measuring those things, it can be really helpful. Develop a company-wide strategy. At the right is a short version of one that we did, and we do these in a Google Doc. And basically, this is how we use ACT here. We put videos, we put screenshots, and it's just kind of a one-pager for this is how we use ACT. And so anybody that forgets, they can go back and refer to this, and it's a living, breathing document. The nice thing about a Google Doc is if you add something to it. Remember I said a crawl, walk, run strategy is a good one. As you move from crawling to walking, you can go add a few things in there. We've even had groups that had different levels. So we had some folks that they just were not technical. So you know what? I'm okay with them crawling. Just be consistent. And then we had some other folks that wanted to do a little bit more, and we had some other folks that just supercharged and did it all. Well, in ACT, we have layouts, and so I can have a different layout for every team. And so the basic guys, we had a layout for basic stuff, and then we had an intermediate layout, and then we had a complex, sophisticated layout. And ACT will allow you to do that kind of thing. But the Google Doc is a really good way to just encourage consistent use of the product. So you're not going to get consistent reporting without consistent use and consistent placement of the data in the database. I meant to put a title here, but here's some information. You know, what's it take? We want to keep all your documentation in one place. Get your team involved in the planning process. Put it into writing. Delegate it. Designate to the right people. Give folks the right tools. The Google Doc, keep your documentation in the same place. And by all means, keep it simple. I've seen projects fail because they made it so complex. It was just too much of a change for folks to take advantage of. And keep it simple and they'll do better. One suggestion is to try creating buyer personas. And I didn't write this one. I borrowed it off of a website. But you get an idea. You know, when somebody calls us, I'm able to quickly decide what type of persona we've assigned to them. And we have marketing materials and we have follow-up letters, and we actually track them based upon the persona that they have. And it might be a combination of how they work. It might be a combination of who they are in the sales process. And it might be a combination of the products that you are offering to them. But you know, if you do this enough times, you're gonna see some patterns and trends in the people you talk to. And you know, I've got a guy in mortgage, and they basically understood that financial decisions came into one of about 9 different categories. And so they would track which category was important. Was it maximizing retirement savings or short-term cash or education savings for the kids? And they recorded that in the CRM. And so that gave us, you know, if we want to do a seminar on education savings, they pulled up everybody in the database that said that was important. And they had a seminar for them, or they marketed to them specifically, or they had programs specifically for them. That's a great way to differentiate the, that's a great way to differentiate yourself in the market. If you've got competition, everybody's selling on price, you know, so go back to the guys in mortgage, you know, everybody, you know, what do? You call up and say, what's your rates today? And you either have to make something up, but if you're higher at all, they're going to go on to the next guy. They're looking for the guy that tells them the lowest rate, regardless of whether he can do it or not. And so one of my friends said, you know, I need to know about 28 things about your financial situation to give you the best rate. And in doing that, he took the price out of the equation and focused on building trust and adding value. And he kept clients for a lot longer because they knew he was going to give them a fair, competitive rate, but he was going to look out for what specifically they needed. And it was a big, big factor. Okay, so we talked about this a little earlier. It's been known to increase revenue. A lot of companies, 43% of businesses that utilize CRM are failing to use even half of the CRM correctly. And an inadequate strategy is a huge factor in this being difficult. So keep it simple, crawl, walk, and run, and you'll see some advantages here. So finally, when this is done, we can manage our sales there. We can use custom dashboards. We can put advanced queries for fields. We can collaborate as a team. And this is just going to allow you to have better communication with the folks that you work with the people that you hope to sell to or take care of. Here you see the financial objectives we had for the mortgage database. So improve cash flow, maximize retirement savings, maximize education savings, live on a single income. You know, we put this in the database. And in doing so, it allowed us to have a better quality conversation with our users, but also when we're sending out marketing. If you don't do something like this, you're kind of regulated to sending out apple pie recipes because you don't know anything specific. There's nothing specific kept in your database. And so by having specific information, you can send something out about maximizing monthly cash flow or maximizing retirement savings if you read an article. And it just greatly increases the value of the relationship and the communication. So that's what I have for that. Here is me. I'm an ACT certified consultant, and we sell ACT, host ACT, consult on ACT, fix ACT that's broken, that kind of stuff. And love to have any questions. If anybody wants to raise their hand or take a question, I can do that. I'm going to record. I recorded this actually, which I'm going to stop right now.